Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Prana with Milauni. In this space, we talk about health, wellness, and share positivity and inspiration to uplift the human mind. My guest for today is Harvard University trained, award winning researcher, publisher, and educator in the field of mind body medicine, Professor Ronie Newman. Professor, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I'm so delighted that you have created this platform to help get out some of the best secrets, which really shouldn't be secrets for wellness, happiness, and longevity. So I'm grateful to you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Professor, when I was reading about you, you have talked about on this topic about your research at leading international organizations, the World Bank, the United Nations, and you've also been interviewed by leading health and wellness magazines and journals, and also talked about this at leading TV shows on broadcast networks. So, wow, thank you so much. We're so grateful that you came on our channel to share this beautiful scientific research. So, for our viewers, Professor Newman's research has been oriented around the benefits of breath work. She has been coordinating the research with over 100 scientists across the globe on the benefits of the Sudarshan Kriya Yoga. I am so excited to hear about the background, the scientific research on this practice, which I have been personally practicing for over 17 years. And of course, we've shared this with so many people, millions of people around the world, but the people that in my circle always come back to me and tell me, oh, I feel great. This has brought me so much peace, or I feel healthy in my body. And of course, that's great to hear, but now to hear scientific research, oh my God, such a brilliant cause and such brilliant work. Thank you so much again for doing this amazing work. Professor Newman, I'm going to get right into my first question. Um, yeah, so now on the physical front, right, at the physical level, by practicing the Kriya, I myself have found that my immunity has gotten better, my hormonal balance, it's better. Even my body feels stronger, limber, my muscles nice and toned. Digestion is better. I would also have a lot of inflammation in my body, which would cause so much aches and pains that cause sleepless nights for me, right? But with the Kriya, all of that over a period of time went away. And I'm just proud to say that today I'm 40 and I've been in the best shape, the best fitness of my life. And I attribute a lot of this to the practice of the Sudarshan Kriya. So tell us the scientific behind research of how I feel so physically great fit with the practice.
Oh, I'm delighted to do it because it's actually done the same for me. When I was at Harvard, when I was in graduate school, I went to the Middle East doing conflict resolution research. And really, it's the perfect place for that. But I got deathly ill. And I had the best medical treatments because I had Harvard Medical School. My father was on the faculty of another medical school. And still, nothing was really making a difference until I learned the sky breath. And so this is the reason why something which is sort of surprising to people, how something as easy to control as our breath, we can breathe fast, we can breathe slow, we can hold our breath. How can it have such powerful implications? Well, this is how. So thank you for the opportunity to get the word out. You see, we have two major aspects of our automatic or autonomic nervous system. And you may remember from high school biology that many, or most of our bodily functions are not in our conscious control. Thank God. We don't have to beat our hearts and digest our food consciously. But all of these functions that are automatic, our heartbeat, our digestion, our lacrimation, which is the production of tears, the production of saliva, all of these things are out of our control. But they're very powerfully impacted by our emotions and by illness and by stress, because these two major, this automatic or autonomic nervous system, as I said, has two major branches. one of which everybody is very familiar with. And that is the fight or flight response, right? People know, you go in to take an exam or you're ready to give a talk and your heart starts beating fast and you may start perspiring and all of that, right? And so that is the fight or flight response kicking in. Because whenever the body feels overloaded with stress, the fight or flight response kicks in. And the reality is that our bodies don't know the difference between an intellectual threat or a conscious threat like failing an exam and a real threat like a bear jumping out behind a tree in the campgrounds that we're in. The same reaction is elicited in the body, and it's out of our control. Now, the other aspect of our nervous system where we're supposed to spend most of our time is very peaceful. It's sometimes referred to as the rest and digest aspect of our nervous system. And it's where human beings as a species were intended to spend most of our time. It's where we're most creative. It's where we're most rested. It's where our immune function is the strongest. It's where our hormones are balanced. It's where longevity sits, all of that. And so there are these two, it's like a seesaw. And as one goes up, the other goes down. Obviously, the more stressed we are, the less relaxed we are. And it's out of our control. You go into a room to take the boards for qualifying for anything or on a first date, and your heart is beating and you can't will your heart to stop. It happens automatically. And so these two arms, the rest and digest and the fight or flight, they're like this. Now, and as I said, it's all out of our control except for one function only, and that's our breath. That's respiration. As I mentioned, we can breathe fast, we can breathe slow, we can hold our breath. And so because of that, the breath forms a powerful window into the autonomic or autonomic nervous system. And it allows us to have power, some control over whether the fight or flight response or the rest and digest response is dominating in our system. And it does what in the medical literature is called creating autonomic homeostasis or ideal balance. And that's why when people practice the sky breath in particular, and there are so many studies, blood pressure comes down, heart rate comes down, the stress hormone cortisol, which is really not a very popular hormone these days because it is the stress hormone, it comes down from the very first session. Doesn't take months to master, it's immediate. And what's also found, and it drops by more than half in the very first session. And what's also been found, if we look at cortisol, is simply that the longer people practice, the lower their baseline of cortisol is. And you can sort of think of it like boiling water. The closer you are to the boiling point, the less it takes for the water to start boiling. So the higher your baseline of stress is, the quicker it is for the system to kick into flight or fight mode. Whereas if you're all the way down here, it takes a whole lot more to kick in the fight or flight response. And the fight or flight response is what ages us. And it causes, as you mentioned, inflammation, which is now understood to be at the root cause of virtually all disease. And so our hormones function better, our heart functions better, our lung capacity increases, everything improves really, really rapidly. Like the changes in heart function are found in 2 weeks. The changes in cortisol level are found in 1 day. It's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable.
Wow, this is brilliant. Amazing. This is, uh, yeah, that explains, how even people come back to us and myself too, that we feel more physically agile even. And I think that this is such a valid explanation that it actually allows you to be more in the rest and digest state with the breath work that we practice, rather than always being the go, go, go mode, which otherwise then causes all the stress. Brilliant. So Professor Newman, I wanted to ask you, I myself have suffered with depression, anxiety, and loneliness. And, mental health is also an unprecedented crisis these days.
Yes.
Yes. And, but and with the practice of the Kriya, I now feel more friendly. I feel more happy. I feel more stronger in my mind. I can take on challenges, overcome obstacles without getting panicked, even, And of course, that with so many other people that I shared this with have shared the same experience. One person, she was actually on antidepressants. She even got off her medication with regular practice of the Sudarshan Kriya. How could you explain that scientifically,
Yeah,
Professor Newman?
yeah. And again, we know that our mind and body are connected. It's not just like there's one science from here to here, and then there's another science from here down. We know that. And our emotions, we know from science, are everywhere in our body. And they're transmitted there almost instantaneously by chemical messengers. They're called neuropeptides, but just chemical messengers is good. And every time we have an emotion, it produces a ton of chemicals in the body. And those chemicals are rapidly picked up by cells in our immune system, in our central nervous system, in our gut, everywhere in the body. And so we see that the two are connected. Now, the other aspect is that when we have emotions, like when people have depression, for example, there's a well-being hormone called prolactin, which is abnormally low. And we also know that when people are depressed, there's the fight or flight response that I talked about is what's called hyperstimulated. It's on overdrive. And so when you reduce that, that's one aspect of how it affects the emotions. The other aspect is that, as I mentioned, when we come into that rest and digest place, then the hormones that we need for ideal balance, like we have to have adequate amount of prolactin. Abnormally low levels of prolactin are a key signature for people who are depressed and anxious. And what's been found in the research is that the levels of prolactin begin to increase back into the normal range also within a week's time when people practice the sky breath. So that's just only one aspect, is that when people are stressed, it's like mind affects body, body affects mind. So if people feel depressed, they produce more cortisol, they produce less prolactin. And because they have less prolactin and more cortisol, then they feel even more depressed. And so it's a cycle that goes on and on. When you break the cycle through the physiology, by changing the body physiology to create again that homeostasis, then the body does what it needs to do. So that's one aspect of how the breath affects the emotions and our emotional well-being. The other aspect is quite fascinating, actually. We know from science that every emotion that we have produces a specific signature, like a thumbprint, in the breathing patterns. If you see somebody who's depressed, the breath it's a short, shallow inhale and that's how they breathe, correct? And if Mother's Day is coming up, and if, when a little boy goes out into the backyard and pulls daisies from the backyard, even though they're really weeds, and here, mommy, happy Mother's Day, what happens to the mother's breath? Oh, oh, right? It's even and long and deep. And so we know that every emotion creates a specific signature in the breath. But what we also know now is that it's a two-way street. Not only do emotions change our breath patterns, but if we change our breath patterns, we can actually change the emotional state. And that's what the breath does very immediately, very powerful, that it actually changes the emotions that we're having. In fact, I taught a famous actress the practice, and she shared with me, and I can't mention her name because we're not supposed to names drop. But anyway, she shared that when she was first starting out, her acting coach taught her to breathe it, like if she needed to display anger or she needed to display fear, he taught her specific patterns to breathe, and then those emotions would kick in. So it's just absolutely phenomenal. And that's why, I mean, we are not medical doctors. I'm a researcher. I'm not a medical doctor. So I am not offering any medical advice. I am simply letting individuals know that as an adjunct to everything of value that they are already doing, you don't have to drop anything. When you add this to whatever you're already doing, the results are profound. There was a study at the mood disorder clinic at the University of Toronto where they took people who were under standard of care for anxiety, and they taught them the sky breath, the Sudarshan Kriya Yoga. And what they found was that 77% of the patients had a significant reduction in their anxiety levels, and 41% went into complete remission. And so when that happens under the supervision of your physician or whoever your healthcare provider is, you can discuss, altering or tapering the herbs or medication or whatever it is that you're doing, but stay with whatever you are doing. And just,
Yes, absolutely.
and
Yeah.
that's really important to understand. And yet this is a beautiful adjunct. It's a beautiful adjunct to whatever it is that you're already doing.
Absolutely. Yes, it's an amazing addition, and you never know where it can take you in the path of healing and self-development as well, right?
Yeah.
Professor Newman, one of the greatest gifts for human beings is that of relationships, right? We all have relationships, and many, right, with our parents, kids, and relatives, and friends, and what have you, even with I have felt that I used to have an inability to make friends, and I used to actually be rather shy. But I feel that now with the practice, I feel so much more confident and so much more happier. And so I really feel that I can have satisfying relationships with people, where, happier mind. And that also kind of surprised me as to my ability of making friends, my ability to relate to people, my ability to even share joy is so great now, and transform and uplift lives. And I love the work that I do. But also, could you tell us a little bit about how the whole practice helps us have better relationships with everybody, really, and
Yeah,
also,
absolutely.
yeah, and also wanted to add that how do we use this to make our own selves happier, have a better connect with our own selves, a better relationship with ourselves also, right? It goes both ways, surely. Yeah.
And I would add, that's a very astute point. Oh, you're so brilliant. And what I would say is that what you just mentioned, our ability to connect with ourselves and feel comfortable in our own skin, that's the basis for being able to have more satisfying relationships, because ultimately we can only give what we have. And as a species, see, a lot of all of these practices, what they come back to is bringing us back to the ideal state that the human being was created to live in, to create that ideal homeostasis. And we know that as a species, we survive better when we're in a group rather than in isolation. And they now actually say, the research is showing that feeling isolated, which has become epidemic, is equivalent to smoking 7 cigarettes a day in terms of its damaging effect on health. So we know we are wired by our creator, however you conceive the creator, whether it's nature or a higher power, doesn't matter, that the human beings are wired to connect with others. And so all we have to do is remove the stress, remove the obstacles, which in a very oversimplified way, when we have that autonomic homeostasis, it means that we're in balance and we're back to a more ideal state from which we can then flourish. And it is natural. If you see a little child fall in the street, everybody runs to go help the child. Nobody thinks twice about it because it is our nature. And when the stress is gone, we are naturally more happy. We find that, as I mentioned, the hormones, like the stress hormones that keep us isolated, because when we feel stress, one of the things that happens is that our awareness narrows and we produce a kind of brainwave which limits our focus. So we miss the cues of friendliness and belongingness that are out there, people reaching out to us. And we're also so protected that we don't reach out to other people. And once the shell is gone, the natural tendency comes out. I noticed how I speak to people who I don't even know in the grocery store. Like just yesterday, there was an elderly woman with her aide, and she had apparently a new walker because the price tag was still hanging on it. And so when I passed her, I said, "Oh, you have such a lovely new walker. Use it in good health." And this woman, who was like all hunched over like this, she just totally brightened up, and because that's human nature. And so all we really have to do is get rid of the dust that's clouding our human nature, and we reach out. The other aspect is there are certain hormones like oxytocin, which is the social connectedness, the belongingness hormone. And I'm actually collaborating on a study right now with Stanford Medical School on the effect of the sky breath on increasing that hormone, the hormone oxytocin, even in individuals who are considered vulnerable populations, at-risk communities, because when we breathe in particular ways, as I mentioned, we come back to the ideal state, and from there we can even flourish further. Because to quote the World Health Organization, health is more than the absence of disease or infirmary, but a state of vital well-being on the physical, mental, and social level. And that's what happens with the breathing. You can think of a horse with blinders. When we're stressed, that's literally the way our brain functions, as if we have these blinders. And once you take away the blinders, it's like, oh, this world is so beautiful. And when we feel happy, it's the natural tendency, like the little boy who brings his mother a handful of daisies. So all we're doing is polishing away the side effects of our current situation and of all things times past, because all these things that have happened to us in the past leave a residue, a biochemical residue in the physiology that structures the way we see everything going forward. And so it's like having dirty glasses, which my best friend always, when we'd be on the beach, he'd say, "How can you see out of those things? They're so smoky." And he'd always, clean my sunglasses, and all of a sudden it was like, ah. And that's what we're doing to our mind, our body, and the connection, our mind, body, spirit complex.
Wow, Professor Newman, what you said really struck a chord with me because, through our childhood, we're all holding on to so much, the impressions of whatever has gone past. And that actually determines our behavioral aspect in our current situation in our current lives, right?
Yes.
And then it's not fair that it would sometimes come out on people that are around us, maybe
Yeah.
the kids or whoever's living in our house or
Right.
anything, right? And so for ourselves, we need to, obviously, I'm sure we've seen that also anger comes through at, sometimes if you're lived in a very angry environment or have been subjected to a lot of anger, sometimes you develop anger issues, right? So to shed all of that out so that we can really thrive in our life and be better versions of our life and give our life our 100%. I think it's so important with this practice. What brilliant research. So, Professor Newman, my last question to you is, and actually, we were talking about this on the phone when we were setting up this interview, and you shared with me about a situation where your mother was in the emergency with high blood pressure, and something that you taught her brought it down, and it amazed the doctors as well. Could you please share a little bit about that
Oh,
amazing technique?
sure.
Yeah,
And
for our viewers.
I'm happy to teach it. It's really easy. You can learn it just from watching this video. So the background is, when my mother was 93 and still living on her own, she had been, doing practices for years and years and years, was vital, living on her own, still driving. She went running to get the phone and fell flat back on the tile and had a huge bump on the back of her head. And fortunately, she didn't lose consciousness. She called me. I rushed her to the hospital. They did all of these tests in the emergency room. And thank goodness, like there was no permanent damage, and there could have been, it could have been the end, but it wasn't. Thank God, it wasn't. But when the body undergoes trauma like that, the fight or flight response kicks in and stays active for hours because it's scanning the body to see, if there's damage, it needs to be repaired. Anyway, because of various other medication that she was on, they couldn't give her anything more than they already had to bring down her blood pressure. And her blood pressure was at 199/100, which, if you're not familiar, that means that she was in danger of throwing a blood clot and dying from a stroke. That kind of blood pressure, you're like walking the tightrope to have a stroke. And there was nothing that the hospital could do. And after one doctor came in and another doctor came in, and they kept telling her, you're fine, please just relax. I realized I had to do something. And so I said, okay, Mom, I'm going to teach you a breath that we teach to gangs in the inner city to get them to chillax. I said, and I'm going to teach it to you, and we're going to do it together. It's called straw breath. And I taught her the straw breath, and her blood pressure came down 30 points in 2 minutes. 30 points in 2 minutes. And then because she had an issue with high blood pressure, she had a little journal, and her doctor had told her to take her blood pressure twice a day. And I would see sometimes when her blood pressure would spike when I was looking through her journal that, she'd record like a high blood pressure, and then not that high, but like 167. And then I'd see straw breath, and then I'd see a number like 135. So she was using, whenever she felt stressed, she was using it. So, and the beauty of it is that, like, if you're in a board meeting or, any kind of situation where you're starting to boil and you want to keep your calm, you can do this and nobody knows you're doing it. I've done it at the United Nations. I've done it lots of places where, you get a little bit nervous. So this is how it goes. You take a breath in through the nose, normal full breath, and then you purse your lips like you're holding one of those really skinny straws from Starbucks. And you like that. And you blow out. So we can do it together. And if you're not driving, or you don't otherwise need to keep your eyes open, it's even more relaxing if you close them. So let's do it together. You can just have your palms on the lap facing the sky. And let's take a breath in through the nose and breathe out through the straw. And it's just a slow breath out through the straw, allowing the breath to go out at its own rate. And when you finish the exhale, another inhale. And breathe out. And continue.
Wow, that is wonderful. I feel so great already. I just feel like 50 shades lighter and brighter.
Yeah,
Thank you, Professor Newman, for teaching this to us. This is so impactful. I'm sure that all our viewers are going to be doing this a few times, 2 times a day at least. And, it's so easy to do. You can do it anywhere, really.
absolutely. And if you can do it before bed.
Mm-hmm.
If the mind has been racing all day, or even if you
Mm-hmm.
wake up at night and you have trouble falling asleep, like many people, you just
Yes.
do this, lie down and just do it lying on your back, and you'll see how the body starts settling down.
Yeah, it's wonderful how simple breath work, just simple breath work, and something that we're all gifted with, right? We don't need a membership to breathe. We don't need to join a club to breathe. We can just correct our breath simply by using ancient breathing techniques, yet very significantly for the modern day, and really enhance our whole life, our mental health, our physical health, our relationships, our well-being, the way we work, the way we function in life. I have personally been benefited not just in one aspect, but the entire all the aspects of my life, and so have you, and that's why you've devoted your life to this research so that people can understand this scientifically. So thank you again so much, Professor Newman, for your time. We really appreciate it. And just an encouraging note to all our viewers that if you have not learned the practice of Sudarshan Kriya, uh, come and learn it. It's a 3 day program. It's very simple and very easy, but you do require 3 days to do it, 3 consecutive days, just a few hours a day. And you learn this very powerful technique. We teach it in person, we teach it online. Going to put my email address in the description box of this chat. So feel free to get in touch with me. And also, Professor Newman has very graciously agreed to take on any questions if you have. So if you have any questions, email them to me, and I will be sure to pass it along with to her, and she'll respond back with them. So again, very grateful. If I can call you Ronie, it was so much
Please,
fun. It was
please.
so much fun hearing about this, and really, I feel like so greatly enlightened by this information.
You know, the best-selling book by James Nestor, it's called Breathe.
Hmm.
The New Science of an Ancient Art is the name of the book. And that's
Hmm.
exactly what it is. It's the science that's verifying what has been known really for millennium. And actually, in his book, where he
Hmm.
reviews all of the breathing practices, he has stated in his book that the Sudarshan Kriya, the sky breath,
Hmm.
is the most powerful thing that he has come across. So I highly encourage people to, check it out, see if it resonates with you. And at the very least, practice the straw breath. It's
Absolutely.
our gift to you.
Yes. Thank you again so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and I look forward to meeting you in person very soon, Ronnie.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you everybody for tuning in, because your time is your greatest possession. And thank you for sharing it with us. Bye for
Have a
now.
great day. Bye bye.